At dawn, the sky was already shrouded in gray clouds. The freezing rain began its endless dance as I was still getting ready to leave, and it seemed to grow stronger with each passing hour. I felt the cold droplets penetrate through my clothes, reaching my skin, making me shiver in surprise and discomfort. By the time I reached my car, I was already soaked to the bone, and this sensation of dampness accompanied me until the end of the journey. The drive to the small, God-forsaken town took over 3 hours. I slowly made my way through the flooded streets, while the wind stubbornly tried to push the car off course. The town greeted me with empty, abandoned streets, where the only witnesses to my arrival were scattered cans and plastic bags, lifelessly fluttering in the wind. Upon arrival, I found that the town hall, my destination, appeared more lively than the rest of the town. The old, dilapidated building with its cracked paint and creaky doors seemed to me the last bastion of civilization in this place. Entering, I found myself in a long, dimly lit corridor where faded portraits of past mayors hung on the walls, each seeming stricter and more impenetrable than the last. At the end of the corridor were doors, behind which I assumed lay the mayor's office. The place was bustling. People in formal attire with documents in hand hurried from one room to another, occasionally casting brief glances at me. I had been sitting here for over an hour, and with each passing minute my patience dwindled further. I understood that the mayor was busy, possibly dealing with the very problem that brought me here. However, my respect for my own time and the purpose of my visit made me feel increasingly irritated. I had come here not for myself, but to offer my help, my experience and knowledge to solve their problem. It seemed unfair to me that I was met with such indifference and lack of hospitality. The mayor's office door slowly opened, and his secretary, Henley, appeared on the threshold. "You're expected," he invited me in. Hobbling through the foyer, I stood before the diminutive secretary and waited as he peeked in the door and announced, "Mr. Harris, sir." I squeezed past Henley and entered, with the secretary closing the door behind me. Crossing the threshold, I felt the transition from one world to another, from the cold, impersonal corridor to a warm, authority-laden room. The mayor's office was furnished in a classic style, with heavy furniture that lent it gravitas and seriousness. It's like stepping into the past, I thought, moving across the carpet. Stopping at a mahogany desk, I looked at the man in a suit seated behind it. 57-year-old Conrad McKinley was bald and stout, with piercing gray eyes. "Good afternoon," I said politely. "You're limping," McKinley rasped. I wasn't informed of this. "I beg your pardon," I said. "Never mind, the mayor cut me off. I suppose it's of no consequence. The governor warned me about you. I'm told you represent an agency of the federal government so secretive it doesn't even have a name." "Oh no, Mr. McKinley, it seems you were not fully briefed," I said, continuing. "Our agency is part of the ODNI, and while we mostly engage in analytical activities within the realm of national security, in exceptional cases, we are permitted to conduct operational investigations." The mayor sighed heavily. "That's irrelevant. What matters is how you can help me." "Yet, sir, I believe it's important to note that my agents and I are not nameless enforcers," I interrupted the mayor. "We have a broad range of authorities, and we hope that you will assist us first and foremost in resolving the situation." "Mr. McKinley, I came here out of necessity. You must understand that." At this point, I decided it was best to be direct and establish boundaries. The mayor fell silent for a moment, his gaze appraising me from a new perspective. Then, with a changed tone, he asked, "All right. What do you need from me?" In that moment, I realized the doors for dialogue and cooperation were open. It was time to move from words to action. determining exactly how we could work together. I was dispatched to this small, forgotten town to investigate a series of bizarre murders that had struck the area. Over the past year, there had been 27 fatalities and 35 attacks, behind which, survivors claimed, lurked a creature, a wolf-like beast or perhaps a human. It was an inexplicable phenomenon that raised numerous questions. The first attack, as reports later revealed, occurred at the end of winter. A woman, whose name was withheld for confidentiality, was enjoying the last cold days, walking her dogs in the forest. That day, she noticed her pets behaving oddly. As evening approached, they became restless, whining and trembling as if sensing the approach of something dreadful. She remembered feeling a heavy gaze on her, though all around was the dense darkness of the forest. It seemed to her that she was not alone, that someone or something was watching her. As darkness fell and she prepared to head back to town, she was stunned by an attack. The description of the assailant noted certain features. Its size exceeded any known wolf. Its eyes glowed red in the attack, piercing through the darkness. It was impossible to determine whether the creature was a beast or a man masquerading as a beast. The aggression and strength of the attack were staggering. The dogs, despite their own terror, rushed to their owner's defense, engaging in an uneven battle. Their sacrifice gave the woman a chance to escape, though it cost the lives of several of them. This incident sparked a wave of concern among the local population. Rumors and fears spread faster than official information, throwing the town's usual life into chaos. Street patrols were intensified. Residents started locking their doors with multiple locks, and the forest was now avoided by everyone. That same spring, despite all the precautionary measures taken, a tragedy occurred. 17-year-old Grace disappeared on her way home from a friend's house. This was unusual for her. She always informed her parents if she was going to be late. When evening came and the girl did not return, her parents, alarmed, immediately contacted the police. The search operation began immediately. The police, supported by volunteer groups, organized extensive searches throughout the town and the surrounding forest areas. Within the first 48 hours, all possible locations where Grace could be, including friends' houses, public places, and abandoned buildings, were thoroughly searched. On the third day of the search, one of the groups discovered Grace's body in the forest near the town. The location of the find was secluded, which had hindered her quick discovery. The condition of the body indicated the brutality of the incident, confirming the worst fears of the mysterious beast's involvement in this tragedy. This event sent a shockwave of grief through the town. Grace, known to many as a joyful and friendly girl, left a deep mark in the hearts of the residents with her sudden and tragic end. She became the first officially confirmed victim of this beast. In response to Grace's murder, additional police forces were dispatched to the town. The arrival of reinforced contingents drew the attention of journalists and the media, further increasing the pressure on local authorities. The new forces began work immediately, increasing the number of patrols on the streets and enhancing security measures around the town. Additional surveillance cameras were installed, and checkpoints were set up at the town's entrances to monitor all movements. After the tragic death of Grace, the town was enveloped in a somber silence. Residents, though continuing to live in a state of heightened vigilance, began to hope that the threat had passed. However, this illusion of safety was shattered one summer evening. Two elderly women, returning to the town from a neighboring settlement, encountered an unexpected breakdown. Their car stopped on a secluded stretch of road surrounded by forest that extends for miles around. Without the means to immediately call for help, they decided to wait for someone passing by who could assist them. Twilight was already deepening, casting the surrounding woods in dark shades. The women tried to remain calm, reminding each other that many townsfolk knew them and would surely stop to help. However, as minutes turned into hours without a single car passing by, it began to seem that help might not come. What happened next was only known from the accounts of park rangers, who found the women's bodies during routine patrol the following morning. According to the evidence at the scene, the attack was sudden and brutal. Rangers, experienced in identifying tracks of wild animals, noted that the wounds on the victims' bodies did not match typical attacks by local predators. According to them, the assailant was larger than a wolf but smaller than a bear, which further mystified the description of the beast, remaining elusive to the townsfolk and hunters. Following the discovery of the bodies, police and ranger groups organized an extensive search in the forest in an attempt to find the beast, or at least any traces of its presence in the area. These searches included the use of drones, ground patrols, and even traps. But despite all efforts, the beast seemed to have vanished without leaving a single trace. With the arrival of summer and into the late autumn, the town was gripped by a wave of new attacks. During this period, several attacks resulted in the death of 5 people. Among the deceased was the mayor's youngest grandson, which became a tragic and shocking event for the entire town. On that fateful day, Mayor McKinley's youngest grandson, despite all warnings and prohibitions from adults about entering the forest, ventured there with his school friends. Their destination was a lake deep in the forest, where they planned to swim and spend time. The day promised to be an adventure filled with fun and joy, yet it ended in tragedy. According to one of the children, who miraculously survived, as the friends were enjoying themselves by the water, a huge beast suddenly leapt out of the dense vegetation. This creature, appearing swiftly and unexpectedly, attacked the mayor's youngest grandson and dragged him deep into the forest. The other children, seized by terror, scattered in an attempt to escape. One of them managed to reach the town and inform the adults about what had happened. Immediately after the news of the incident was received, a search and rescue operation was organized. Police officers, rescuers, and volunteers participated in the search for the missing boy. Despite all efforts, the boy was found only the next day. His body was discovered in one of the remote parts of the forest, and by all indications, he had been treated the same as the other victims of the beast. The death of Mayor McKinley's grandson was a heavy blow not only to his family, but to the entire town. The mayor, known for his composure and determination, was deeply shaken by the event. In the fall, when the leaves had covered the ground with a golden carpet and the air had turned cooler, the town faced a new wave of horror. A 42-year-old nurse, finishing her night shift at the local hospital, was returning home. Tired, she barely noticed the quiet rustling that followed her, attributing it to the wind playing with the fallen leaves. But as she ascended the steps to her porch and reached for her keys, the beast attacked her. The moment was so sudden and shocking that the woman didn't even have time to scream. The beast, huge and powerful, with an unseen, cruel gleam in its eyes, pounced on her, leaving no chance for survival. Her screams attracted the attention of neighbors who, despite fear and risk to their own lives, rushed to help. People used everything at hand, brooms, flashlights, and even chairs, trying to fend off the predator from the defenseless victim. The beast, however, retreated slowly, as if demonstrating its disdain and confidence in its superiority, leaving behind the dead body of the nurse, thereby confirming its cruelty and untouchability. When police arrived on the scene, the beast had already left the area and, as was later determined, attacked in another part of town. There, unexpectedly and mercilessly, it attacked another woman, leaving behind a second victim that night, before disappearing into the darkness, filling the town with fear and despair. In response to these tragedies, new attempts were made to increase security measures. Community meetings were held more frequently, where self-defense measures were discussed. The town's authorities, for their part, increased funding for the local police department and park services, hoping that this would strengthen security and perhaps prevent future attacks. In their quest to capture or kill the predator, they began to set traps en masse around the town's perimeter and in the forest surrounding their community. These traps varied greatly, from classic steel traps to complex mechanisms using livestock as bait. The residents worked together, united by a common goal: to stop the threat. However, despite all efforts, the beast continued to elude capture. It skillfully avoided the traps set for it, as if understanding their purpose and danger. The livestock used as bait remained unharmed. The beast showed interest exclusively in humans. This revelation further intensified the fear and puzzlement among the residents. Why did the predator deliberately avoid animals, preferring to attack humans? It was evident that the beast did not choose its victims at random. Most attacks were on women, ranging from the elderly to those in the prime of their life. Men were targeted very rarely, adding more questions to the already complex picture of the threat. Such a choice of victims did not fit into the usual understanding of predator behavior, causing even more anxiety among the population. Witness descriptions of encounters with the beast painted a grim picture. Unlike typical wolves that attack by biting into accessible parts of the victim's body, legs, arms, or neck, this predator acted differently. Witnesses reported that the beast would stand on its hind legs, strike the victim with its front paws across the chest, and then bite off the face. Such attacks were not characteristic of normal wolf behavior and highlighted the abnormal aggression and hunting methods of this creature. Attempts to capture the beast became increasingly desperate. The town's residents and authorities began seeking help from wildlife experts, veterinarians, and even cryptozoologists, hoping to find a way to stop the predator. Mayor McKinley, mourning the loss of his grandson and staggered by the recent attacks, appealed to the state government for immediate action to protect the town. In light of the escalating terror and chaos that engulfed the town following a series of brutal attacks by an unknown beast, the state governor made an unprecedented decision. Recognizing that conventional security measures were ineffective and seeking to quell the panic among the population, he dispatched state internal troops to the town. This decision was not made lightly. Weighing all pros and cons, the governor realized that such measures might be perceived as extreme, but the circumstances demanded immediate and decisive action. Mobilizing troops in peacetime is an extreme measure, typically reserved for serious public disturbances or the threat of terrorist attacks. In this case, the threat came not from people but from something that remained beyond the understanding of local authorities and residents. The governor's decision sparked extensive discussion at the federal level, where some expressed concerns about the precedent it set. Yet the critical situation in the town required urgent actions. With the arrival of the troops in town, a new era began. Soldiers, armed and trained to deal with external threats, combed the forest in search of the beast. They employed a variety of weapons, from automatic rifles to sniper rifles, hoping that this would give them an advantage over the predator. Despite their efforts and the elimination of several dozen wolves, the beast remained elusive, like a shadow slipping through fingers. The consequences of this military presence were twofold. On one hand, some residents felt relief seeing active measures being taken. On the other hand, panic only increased, as despite all efforts, the beast continued to evade encounters with the troops. This created an atmosphere of general uncertainty and fear. Many residents decided to leave the town in search of safety. Families gathered their essentials and departed, uncertain if they would ever be able to return. Those who remained tried to leave their homes as seldom as possible. Women and men, even those without experience in handling weapons, began to carry rifles and pistols, ready to defend themselves and their loved ones. I, along with my team, was sent here by direct order of the federal government to unravel the mystery of the predator. This decision came after long discussions and hesitations at the highest level, as the situation demanded an unconventional approach. Unlike typical agents, my role here is special. Although Mayor McKinley mentioned that my agency does not have a name, he was only partially right. We indeed are part of the ODNI, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Let me explain. This organization officially deals with coordinating the work of our country's intelligence community and analytical activities. In rare cases, ODNI leverages its unique resources to address issues beyond the scope of regular intelligence operations. The division to which I belong is part of this structure, but we are only involved in cases facing phenomena or events shrouded in mystery and not explainable from a rational stance or mundane logic. My team and I are specialists in investigating unusual phenomena, operating at the intersection of science and paranormal research, trying to find rational explanations where it seems none exist. Our work involves deep analysis and the development of response strategies to threats of unknown origin. And we are here, in this town, not to battle myths or legends. Our goal is to restore order and safety, utilizing all the means and knowledge available to us. The intervention at the federal government level undoubtedly caused certain tensions with local authorities. The state governor and the town's mayor, although recognizing the seriousness of the situation, were wary of the appearance of federals, fearing it might undermine their authority and increase panic among the population. However, faced with uncertainty and a rising death toll, they were forced to accept our presence and cooperation. Upon arriving in town, we immediately got to work. After reviewing all available materials and reports on the attacks, as well as conducting a series of interviews with eyewitnesses and survivors, we began to formulate a strategy to capture this elusive beast. After a thorough review of the park ranger's reports and conducting our own observations on the ground, I began to notice oddities in the beast's behavior that did not fit the usual pattern of a wild animal's actions. Rangers reported unusual tracks. Chains of the beast's footprints were sometimes interrupted by human ones. At first glance, this might seem coincidental or the actions of hunters trying to catch the predator. But analysis showed that the human tracks appeared too frequently and systematically to be dismissed as coincidence. Reviewing the maps of the tracks, I concluded that there must have been someone else alongside the predator. Someone who was not merely following the beast, but possibly directing its actions. This thought seemed both insane and the only possible explanation at the same time. If the predator indeed had an owner, it would explain why all attempts to capture it had been futile. A beast, guided by a human, could easily avoid traps and ambushes, being forewarned about them. My musings led to the formation of a theory that the predator's owner could be someone local, perhaps even someone actively involved in the hunt for the beast. This person might know every step taken by the townspeople and authorities to capture the beast and use this knowledge to protect their creature. Continuing my investigation, I began to scrutinize the reports of the attacks more closely, trying to find any pattern or clue that could point to the identity of the owner. It was crucial to understand not only the motives of the beast, but also the motives of the person behind these actions. Perhaps it was related to revenge, a desire to control, or to exert power over nature and people. Or maybe the task before me was even more complex and mysterious. Our mission was clear: to find the beast's owner, find the owner, catch the predator. But I also developed another wild theory, which seemed even more plausible. To identify the beast's owner, I had to delve deep into analyzing the situation, sifting through various options and details. Considering that thousands of people were involved in the capture, including local administration employees, town residents, invited hunters, park rangers, as well as police officers, military personnel, and even FBI agents, I began to systematize information, looking for patterns. It became clear to me that the beast's owner, hiding among us, had to be not just a random participant in the events. He had to have a thorough knowledge of the planning of the hunt and the actions of the hunt, to be aware of all operations from the beginning. This is a very important point. Such a person could not be a citizen of this town, a police officer, or military personnel. It had to be someone involved in the development of plans to catch the beast. Focusing on the park rangers became a key aspect of my investigation. They, being more familiar with the forest, its secrets and dangers than anyone else, were actively involved in the search from the very first days. Among them, one person stood out: Park Ranger Bill. He was involved in every operation, offering ideas and sharing knowledge about the forest, which initially seemed like an invaluable contribution. Investigating Bill's background became the central element of my investigation. A former military man, his life was filled with experiences and trials, from serving in the Navy to participating in overseas military operations. The story of his capture and subsequent miraculous escape, somehow evading inevitable fate, added depth to his character. Upon returning to his hometown, he chose the path of seclusion, becoming a park ranger and settling alone near the woods, further emphasizing his desire for isolation from society. Neighbors described him as a reserved person, not prone to socializing, with rumors of his disdain for people. They depicted him as a grim individual, prone to inexplicable bursts of aggression. His fascination with dogs sparked particular interest. Neighbors claimed he had several, but upon inspection of his home by agents at my direction, only the carcasses of animals were found. This fact deepened the mystery further. His sudden active interest in catching the predator, which sharply contrasted with his usual behavior, also raised suspicions. Being a person who preferred distance from social life, his newfound activity and sudden passion for searching for the beast seemed uncharacteristic and odd. He was among those who claimed that the beast's tracks, intersecting with human ones, were merely those of hunters who had accidentally trampled through the forest. All this appeared to be attempts to divert attention from the true state of affairs. The accumulating circumstantial evidence suggested a possible connection between Bill and the predator, yet without concrete proof, any accusations remained mere speculations. It was crucial to approach the matter with utmost caution, as a wrongful accusation could have serious consequences, given the specificity of our case. The next phase of my work was to gather evidence that could either confirm or refute my suspicions about Bill's role in the series of attacks. This required not only a deep understanding of his personality and past, but also a careful examination of all case circumstances to reveal a connection between him and the beast terrorizing the town. Every detail, every piece of information collected, could bring us closer to unraveling this mystery. I was ready for further investigation, aware of the complexity and importance of the task before me. After a thorough analysis and gathering of information about Bill, I came to the inevitable conclusion about his involvement in the mysterious attacks of the predator on our town's residents. The decisive argument was an incident between Bill and the mayor, which preceded the tragic death of the mayor's grandson. This event stood out as a critical point in my investigation, indicating deeply personal motives that could have driven Bill to such extreme measures. Developing a plan to capture him proved to be a complex task, requiring ingenuity and meticulous planning. I divided the operation into several stages, aiming to maximize the element of surprise and psychological pressure on the presumed owner of the beast. In the first stage, it was decided to seemingly accidentally leak confidential information among the rangers that my agent Rose had discovered a crucial detail about the predator, the possible existence of an owner. And she was independently investigating in this direction from us. This was done in such a way that the news would reach Bill, making him believe that the revelation of his secret was imminent. In the second stage, I orchestrated a leak of information that Rose had allegedly found a key witness who could point to the beast's owner. This step was intended to heighten the pressure and force Bill to take some action that could betray him. The third stage was the most risky. I announced a large-scale operation to catch the predator in the forest, focusing attention and resources on the eastern part of the forest. Many military personnel, police officers, and hunters were directed there to prepare for a non-existent operation, while the real purpose of the action was entirely different. I left Rose at the headquarters, having previously passed her a secret note through the park rangers. The note instructed her to head to a house in the northern part of the town and uncover the identity of the beast's owner. I had set a trap using Rose as bait to coax Bill out of hiding. Preparing to execute the plan required not just meticulous planning, but also readiness for unforeseen circumstances. I couldn't ignore the risk to Rose, but I was confident in her professionalism and ability to handle the task. Every step of the operation was calculated to force Bill into action, exposing his connection to the predator. All I could do was hope that he would believe and fall for the ruse I had crafted, allowing us to finally capture both the beast and its owner, ending the long months of fear and uncertainty that had enveloped the town. Night had already wrapped the town in darkness when Rose parked her car in front of the old house on the outskirts, where the operation's key moment was to take place. Inside awaited a person who, according to the plan, was to reveal the secret of the beast's owner. It was none other than the town's mayor, who had taken on the role of actor in this risky game. Not without difficulty, but I managed to convince him of the necessity of his participation, promising that this night would be decisive in the hunt for the beast that had taken his grandson's life. Knowing the strained relationship between Bill and the mayor, I counted on this being the final link to provoke Bill into more decisive and possibly rash actions. To avoid arousing Bill's suspicions, I headed with my team to the eastern part of the forest in the morning, creating the appearance of our departure from town. However, by evening, we returned to discreetly take control of the situation. We stationed ourselves in a building opposite, turning it into our temporary headquarters, from where we could monitor the unfolding events. At the same time, a group of hunters and military personnel, specially prepared for this mission, took up positions around the perimeter, on the roofs of neighboring buildings, equipped with sniper rifles and night vision devices. Everyone was ready for action. My heart pounded in anticipation of the climax as I stared at the clock, counting down the minutes until Rose was to enter the house. This plan, fraught with danger at every step, required all of us to be highly focused and ready to act instantly. The time inside the house was limited to 25 minutes, enough to convince Bill of the seriousness of our intentions and provoke his reaction. According to the plan, the mayor was to leave the building first, followed by Rose 5 minutes later. Each minute of waiting seemed like an eternity. My thoughts inevitably returned to past missions when risk and uncertainty were my constant companions. I remembered being wounded in the leg while chasing a large monster in the sewers of a similarly small town. Back then, I was on operational duty. Now, I was directing the operation, and my involvement was limited to overall coordination, which was even more challenging. The wait became a test of my nerves. and my experience showed that the success of the operation often depends on the ability to withstand this tension. 20 minutes into the operation, as per the pre-approved plan, the mayor of the city emerged from his house. His gaze swept over the surroundings, checking the safety of the route. He quickly made his way to his car, trying not to attract undue attention. His task was to reach the city's administrative building, where an additional ambush was set up. There, another group of hunters, police officers, and my agents were ready to intercept the beast. I stood in the shadows, carefully concealed from view, observing every move the mayor made. A minute later, his car disappeared from sight, leaving behind only swirling clouds of dust. Shortly thereafter, Rose emerged from the house. Her figure stood out against the quiet backdrop of the home, like the last bastion in this hidden war with the unknown. She headed towards the car, and in that moment, each of us hidden in the shadows held our breath, ready to intervene immediately. Rose, finding herself in the open, seemed like the perfect target. Perhaps realizing the potential danger, she either accidentally or intentionally dropped her keys, adding to the tension of the moment. My hand clenched the radio tightly as I watched Rose searching for the keys on the ground. It was a moment of maximum vulnerability, the perfect opportunity for the beast to strike. The tension in the air was so thick that I felt the bones in my fingers whiten from gripping the radio. Seconds passed, a minute, and then another, but no attack came. Rose found the keys, got into the car, and drove away, and the beast never appeared. There was no movement, no attack. A cacophony of thoughts and conjectures thundered in my mind. Where was the beast? Why didn't it attack? All my doubts and fears mingled in a chaotic dance. Either Bill had recognized the trap, or he had another plan, or perhaps he had sensed the presence of others near the house. I felt like a cornered beast that had let its prey slip away. But this was only the beginning. According to Plan B, Rose was supposed to return to the hotel, where our temporary headquarters were set up. And there, in this last refuge, I had organized another ambush. I assumed that if the beast didn't attack here, it would do so there. But I was wrong. The next unexpected message over the radio made my heart skip a beat. The agent watching the administrative building began to panic. The mayor had disappeared. He never showed up where he was expected according to the plan. The uncertainty surrounding the mayor added a new level of complexity to an already tangled affair. We needed to act quickly but cautiously, not to miss any details that could shed light on the current events. I immediately ordered the agents and hunters, who were with me in the ambush near the house, to split into groups and search for the mayor. Meanwhile, I got behind the wheel and raced after Rose. My heart pounded in my chest with worry because every second was crucial, and the path to the hotel where Rose was headed could become a trap for her. Contacting her via the radio, I sternly warned her to be extremely vigilant. My words were concise, but they carried the seriousness of the moment. The mayor was missing, and she could be in danger too. Rose responded confidently. Her voice sounded decisive and calm, which somewhat reassured me. Soon I caught up with her, and together we continued the search for Mayor McKinley. On the way, a freezing rain poured down on us again, as if testing our resilience. It drummed against the car roof, creating an illusion of safety within the metallic cocoon. However, the external world was full of threats, and each of us understood that perfectly. After half an hour of searching, we had results. One of the groups found the mayor's car. It was discovered not far from the operation site, hidden in dense woods, which explained why it hadn't been noticed immediately. Arriving at the scene, I couldn't hide my agitation. Claw marks on the car's body and dents on the doors indicated a struggle. Around the vehicle, on the rain-soaked ground, were traces of a scuffle. Deep imprints leaving no doubt about the seriousness of what had transpired. We continued following the trail, which led us deeper into the forest. With each step, the air seemed heavier with apprehension, and the forest's silence was so dense it felt like it could be cut. The tension in the air grew heavier and the threat more real and unpredictable. We moved in silence, each immersed in our thoughts and fears. Thoughts of the possible fate of Mayor McKinley and who might be behind his disappearance swirled in my mind. Answers awaited us ahead. Soon we found a rifle snapped in half. It was a grim testament to a fierce struggle. Nearby, bloodstains on the ground marked a path to the mayor's torn jacket. There were many broken branches around, and by all indications, a fierce battle had taken place, the consequences of which were felt in every shattered piece of wood and drop of blood. A little further on, one of my agents, near a small stream, discovered the bloodied body of Mayor McKinley. The gruesome find made us all stop in our tracks. The mayor lay atop a huge beast, its fur soaked in blood. Both were dead. The mayor's gaze was empty, but his hand still tightly gripped the handle of a knife plunged into the predator's heart. The beast, even being dead, caused horror with its terrible grin. Mayor McKinley was a rather large man, and it seemed his final fight was one of desperation and determination. It was a vengeance for his slain grandson, a final act of justice carried out with his own hands. The examination of the beast raised more questions than answers. Hopes of unraveling the mystery of a mythical or legendary creature dissipated when it became clear it was just an ordinary animal, albeit of an unusual kind. The beast was a hybrid of a wolf, a dog, and possibly another animal never before seen in these parts. Its body length from head to tail was about 2 meters. Its disproportionately large head with enormous fangs, heavy jaws, and long front legs all made it truly menacing. The beast's fur was gray with reddish patches, and there were several black stripes on its sides, near the base of its tail. After the deadly skirmish in the forest, the predator attacks seemed to cease. We felt relief, but also uncertainty, as our work was far from over. The prime suspect in the series of attacks, a park ranger named Bill, had vanished without a trace. This added new questions to the existing ones. We combed every corner of the forest, expanding the search area to neighboring towns. Bill was put on the wanted list, but all attempts to find him were in vain. The mystery of his disappearance hung in the air like dark clouds before a storm. About 3 months later, we received news of a discovery that made each of our hearts skip a beat. In a national park in a neighboring state, the body of a man was found, his features unrecognizable. So severely had he been mauled by the predator. By all indications, it was Bill. His body was torn apart, his face gnawed off. The irony of fate lay in the fact that the man we thought was the master of the beast had become its victim. This discovery reignited old doubts within me. From the outset, I had suspected there might be several hybrid predators, perhaps even a whole pack. Bill's death likely confirmed my fears. Perhaps in the forests of our country, creatures with incredible intelligence and strength lurked, able to remain unnoticed and survive despite all human efforts to find them. We halted active searches, but the investigation continued.